Alright, what I'm going to do now is I have a piece of ballistics gelatin, the same as we used on the head. It's about a 10-15% ratio. I try to keep it a little harder for the heads, but that's the piece I've got. It's on top of wet phone books. Yes, wet phone books, because you want it to be a lot like the rolled wet newspaper, so it's not so damaging to the blade and it's possible to cut or to pierce into it, like we do with the daggers as well, to see how many you can pierce. I'm going to put a piece of double layer of coarse, tightly woven linen on top, which is actually real linen sacks, sent to us by Andreas Knoll. If you know these, I've used them in many tests, even the ones with Roland Varzeka or Demecanter in Egan, Minnesota. When we went to Ausfolk Viking martial arts and I tested the mail, we had some layers of this under it to make a proper gambeson for actual mail. Because in my mind, I think all time periods, whether they say they did or not, gambeson was worn under, because you still find some documentation of something worn under the mail, even though we don't find it from those time periods. But this is just a test to see how it performed on this kind of material, and if it can make it through the cloth, and whether it needs to make it through the cloth to make it into the actual foam books. I think it's going to perform well. I don't think this will damage this axe. The axe has taken no damage already from our gel head. Nothing that I could notice, unless you're talking in microns, like microscopically, looking at it really close. The edge is held up extremely well. Let's go ahead and see what happens. Oh! And what happened is we cut into our gambeson, put a new hole in it, and we pierced all the way into the foam book. And that means the cloth actually gave way and went into the cloth actually went into the gel. That means this was enough force that it would have pushed your clothing inside your flesh, whether they cut or not. The clothing would be forced inside the hole, and you would get a wound through that much flesh that deep into something even tougher, such as the foam book. Let's go ahead and try it without this, although we did cut it. That is actually a very cool thing, considering this is so old and has not really been resharpened. It's just the way it is. So let's go ahead and try this out. See what happens like this. I don't think it's going to harm it. Oh! It has quite a bit of bounce to it. I think that has something to do with the container that it's on. But as you can see, we went through our gel. Very beautiful cut going through the gel. Didn't damage our patina. We do have a little bit on the edge where the patina's gone, and you can see the sheen on the actual edge itself. You can see the iron, or the actual grayish silver. I don't think he really minded. That was one of the things he said he didn't mind if I sharpened it. I didn't think I totally would. But we made it all the way into our material, which through the gel, which absorbs impact, and considering these foam books I thought were completely wet, or not wet, it would have much deeper if these were wet. But since we haven't damaged our axe in any way, I don't think it would matter that we get pages that were actually dry at that point. So I didn't have a lot of time to soak them. I thought I was going to have more time. But as you can see, we've made it almost through our foam book, the tip of the axe. We're still going here, and we still have damage to the foam book. So yes, if these were totally soaked, I have a feeling they would have gone much deeper. So that is very impressive. Going through the cloth, driving the cloth through the gel into the foam book, and cutting the actual cloth, and then cutting our gel by itself and cutting into the foam book at that depth, considering I didn't get them the way I wanted. You can see that they're actually pretty much dry in the center where I hit it. And the axe holding up, that attests to the workmanship and craftsmanship that was done at the period. And that the edge is probably separate from the rest, because you can see at the very top here, this was two separate pieces of material that were forged together, sandwiching the hard iron edge. So they definitely wanted a harder edge than they had axe. The axe is probably much softer material. That's why you see the hammerhead, which I did not do, has been kind of folded to one side and smushed out a lot from use, because it's the softer iron. That makes these much cheaper to make. They're much more abundant. That's why we find so much more axe heads historically. They were a tool as well as a weapon, and they were easier and cheaper to make than swords. So this one survived exceptionally well. I think it honored the warrior that wielded it, or the craftsman that wielded it, or both, because he could have been both, and most likely he was both. No matter who he might be, whether he be Torslav or Torsnev, whatever name I came up with. He said another person actually meditated on it, came up with Tor. All they could say was Tor. So maybe it was Taurus then. I think we've honored our ancestors today by testing this. I wouldn't normally do this with an artifact, so anybody out there that's watching this that thinks that I would just grab your sword that's an artifact, swing it around and hit something with it, no, I would not do that. I respect artifacts. But I think in this way we respected it as our ancestors would have. Just as they would use an old bronze sword if they found it in a grave, assuming that it was their ancestors, which comes up in a saga, that it has a green patina on it and a rust on it, a corrosion that they don't know what it is, and it's the best sword the guy ever used, and he believes it's a magical item. This is performed the same way. Being over 1,200 years old, I think it's honored Ulfar Hrolfsson here, who mounted it and sent it, and I think he should hang on to this axe for generations and try to take very good care of it and pass it down to his family, just as they would have done back in the day. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. I very much enjoyed testing an actual artifact or an old axe like this, and I bid you farewell.